has only garnered one word. If it all goes well, we'll whip it out. Later, we'll find out how to determine one's fair share without their consent and reveal a certain dress designer's lack of payment to that fair share pie. Finally, a new story about a new seatbelt mandate from 1984 shows us how 1984 we have really become in this country as people compare vaccine mandates to, that's right, seatbelt laws. All this and so much more. Your emergency exit is right this way.
This exit's for emergencies only.
That's right. Welcome to another episode of Emergency Exit. This is episode 221. Today is Thursday, September 23rd, 2023. We are broadcasting from Austin Public Studios in our floating tin can, far above the world. I'm Los. You could follow me on Twitter at That's Right Los. Joining me today, David's on special assignment, but joining me today is the original co-creator, the high-flying, limousine riding, Rolex wearing, glasses seeing, former conservative, Andrew Bland, my man. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, it's good to have you finally because it's been we're 221 episodes into this, and I think the last episode you did with us was episode 13 or 14. A lot of episodes.
Big.
And you're the big reason why, or at least opened my eyes to politics, because when we started this show, it had nothing to do with politics.
It was about proving conspiracies right or wrong.
Yeah, that was the idea.
We present a different conspiracy every week, and we talk about what we think about it. You know.
And one of our first ones was like Bigfoot. We had UFOs. We did Flat Earth. We even interviewed David Weiss. He actually hit us up not too long ago, and he's like, I got definitive proof. You guys need to put me on and everything.
You want to do another show with him? I'd love to talk to him.
And I asked him what he said, if anyone can prove me wrong or give me, what was it, undeniable proof or can show me proof of a ball Earth, I'll give you 1 Bitcoin. And I was like, did you say 1 Bitcoin?
Yeah, but
I said, what's the definition?
Proof do you have? What proof do you, I'm sorry.
No, I was telling him, like, what is defined as proof in your eyes? Because my proof of a round Earth, have you heard it? Do you know it? Is the South Star. Similar to what we have in the North, Polaris, which is the North Star, which is...
You mean that fake light that's up there in the
That
sky?
fake light that's up there, right? There's the same one that's down south that does the same thing. And if on a round Earth, that's very possible. But on a flat Earth, where is south? Because this is one point that 2 people on 2 different continents can see that same star.
Man, flat Earth is something that is so strange because, yes, we're not on a flat Earth, I don't think.
It doesn't feel flat. I mean, it feels flat, but...
However, there is one way that a flat Earth does work. And that is, are we living in a simulation?
Oh, yes.
So there's a lot of really, really important, smart people that do believe we could be living in a simulation. If we're living in a simulation, we don't know what we're living on. So
what does that mean? For me, that's like Matrix. That's like there's a real me somewhere plugged in. Maybe not even me. Maybe somebody that wants to be me. Right. I don't know why they want to go through that simulation, but they're doing it, and they're in some waterbed like this, and they're just like plugged in. There's like wires everywhere, and they're plugged in. It's like Matrix.
But
is that simulation?
That's too simple. No, what they're saying is that imagine The Sims, right?
Yeah.
We created The Sims. So what they're saying is that if there are societies that are advanced enough to create simulations, the possibility that we're living in a simulation versus the possibility that we're actual human beings is so dramatically different. It's so much more likely that we're living in a simulation than being regular human beings, if it's possible that advanced civilizations can create computer systems. So if there's an advanced alien species out there that has video games that are 5,000 years in the future for us, it's more likely that there's trillions and trillions and trillions of simulated people in these video games, and we are one of those.
Do you think that they can cross-platform? Like, if someone else is playing on a PS5 and someone else is on Xbox One, could they like play the same game but like play against each other if they're on two different systems?
I don't know, man. I mean,
Can we cross simulations?
I don't know, but I think
All these questions should be answered momentarily. In the meantime, thank you again for joining us. It's a journey that I've been on since you've been on the show with politics, and you've changed your call. I mean, Brandon, can you pull up episode 9 and just sort of scan through the beginning of it where he does his political talk? Because you used to do this thing. This is how politics entered into Emergency Exit. It's funny how this was a conspiracy theory show, and you were like, hey, I want to do a little bit of Andy's politic corner. And I was like, oh, here comes the Trump talk. Here it goes. And I thought Hillary was going to win back then, right? I had no idea what was going to happen to America. And I was like, yeah, when Trump finally loses, will you shut the fuck up, Andy? And Trump turned out to win. So the episode I want him to bring up is from the actual night that Trump was elected. It's where you were kind of dialing it in because you were listening to Styx, Hex, and Hammer. And he was calling the election. You were like, my boy, Styx, Hex, and Hammer's called the election.
Yeah.
And I want to have you listen to that, and we'll stop and have you reflect on how you've changed in that, because you definitely are not on the Trump train anymore, from what I understand.
No, not at all.
Yeah. A matter of fact, you think he's a garbage human being.
Well, we can talk about a greater discussion of what I think of politicians in general. I would just put him in
and I think
that,
we will.
you know,
will. Brandon, do you have that ready?
Internet's being slow, but I am in the process.
My man.
So we'll
It's
put a
prob-
disclaimer on this. I'm.
And this is not like a gotcha, like, oh, this is the way.
No,
Look
no.
at how inconsistent he is. No, this is like,
Let's
this
put
is
a cou-
evolution of.
We'll put a couple disclaimers on
Yeah,
this.
go ahead.
Number one, I'm a recovering alcoholic, and so at the time we made these first episodes, I was very alcoholic at the time,
That's correct.
and so I'd like to say that didn't influence my mind at all, but I'm sure it had some.
It had some part.
Some part to
Well, it also made you like more divisive
25
in a way.
months
sometimes.
sober, by the way.
Happy 2 years, bro.
Yeah. Then the other caveat is we're living in a world where it's very hard to have political discussions with people.
Yeah.
And I've always been open and willing to talk about any issue at any time with anyone. And over the course of the last 15 years that I've been following news, politics, and stuff, there's been so many things I've changed my mind on. And I'm always open to the idea that I can change my mind.
Let me ask you this, because there was this one time I took you to a company party. It was at a at a bar across the street from where we work, and you came with me. You were hanging out, and there was this girl, and she's black gal, and you got into some political discussion, and she got fucking heated at you, and the gist of it is that you mentioned stats, unapologetically. And she was like, "What? So you're trying to tell me? So what you're trying to say is that because I'm black or my brothers are black, we have a bigger chance of committing crime. Is that what you're trying to say?" And that used to be, and you were like, yeah, I mean, it's statistically, yeah, like you weren't wrong, but you were people.
No.
That's when I started
That's
to see
not
the
exactly
division.
what it was about.
That's what I got out of it.
So we went to this event. I never bring up politics at a social event. If someone else brings it up first and they want me to discuss it with them, I'm not going to run away from anything like that.
My man.
Right? Also, I was drinking heavily at the time.
Ah, man.
So I think what happened was they were discussing some of the current police, some of the discussions about police that were occurring at the time. And at the time, there was massive movements talking about people that had been killed by the police.
Yeah.
And I think what we were talking about was that there was a book that came out from Heather McDonald called The War on Cops. And this was a book that looked at all the statistical analysis of police shootings, because people were saying, if you have a family member that's of a certain race, you should be actively concerned about whether or not they will be killed by a police officer. the reality is when you look at the statistical analysis of this stuff, the likelihood that you're going to be killed by a police officer is so low, it's almost impossible for it to happen to you,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? The amount of interactions cops have each day that do not result in anybody's harm is undeniable. And we also have the data on everyone each year who is killed by the police.
That's
and
right.
we know the circumstances of these things happening. And so overall, that is an issue where we know that the statistical analysis does not line up with people's perception of what's happening. And I have changed my mind a lot of understanding that I grew up in a bubble and I did not know about the state of racism in America and the state of corruption in the police forces in America. And I absolutely admit now that I was naive to not know that there is a problem with police in America big time, that there is a problem with the interactions going on with certain races versus certain other races in the police force. But, it's kind of one of those things where the de-evolution of politics has taken place so severely that people have a reaction to discussing data of what's happening. So people aren't willing to take their preconceived notion out and say, what am I convinced of and what is the information presented to me? And I know I'm guilty of this all the time. Don't get me wrong. But, to tackle a major issue and omitting all of the data to see what we're talking about is not going to work, right? And so at that time, emotions were very heavy. And I don't really remember this interaction that well, but I think we had a discussion about policing, and I just mentioned what I'm mentioning here, that the statistical analysis is that, the likelihood of your threat from them is almost non-existent. Now, are you
Right.
going to get harassed by people for your race? Unfortunately, that is reality. And I totally admit that that's something where I grew up in a safe neighborhood. I grew up around respectable people that treated people fairly. And I did not realize there were so many areas of the country that had ingrained racial division,
Well, what got you to realize that? What happened?
I took a trip to a small town where I saw a lot of that stuff along the way that I wasn't. Like, I say I'm from the South, but I grew up in Dallas.
Yeah.
When you go to Tennessee, that's a different story.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So just never really venturing out of major cities, because I always grew up in a big multicultural city. You know what I mean? And there wasn't the racial tension that I heard about on the news or whatever. That stuff didn't exist where I was. And especially living in Austin, is a big multicultural city. And
Well, it
You
shows that those are the cities that speak for America. They're the biggest ones out there, and you're not seeing. I grew up the same way, man. I didn't see racism. I saw multicultural. I saw everything,
Right.
and I never thought of racism. And I still don't think racism is a huge issue. I think people see racism where they want to see it, and they cry wolf a lot.
right.
And it's spoken so much more and so much louder now because it's dying. Like, racism is dying away. And there's a concerted effort to keep it in front. Like, for instance, let me ask you a question. Like, I'm curious how you felt about Chauvin and George Floyd. Do you believe that he acted maliciously and killed him, murdered him to grant the life sentence or the 33 years or whatever he's going to jail for? The voluntary manslaughter, I think he's in for.
Well, the jury and the judicial system determined that. I
Yeah.
think there was early on a report that Derek Chauvin and what was the victim?
George Floyd.
George Floyd. There was a report early on that said that they knew each other at a nightclub they both worked at.
I heard that too, but
And it's
that
very possible
ups the
that
st-
they did know each other, and that this cop obviously had a horrible history, that this cop came out that he was not a respectable cop in the first place. So when we talk about policing, as a whole, you can say, well, there's all the statistical analysis that shows you that it can't be. It's like thinking you're going to get bit by a shark. You know, if we look at the data, you're not going to get bit by a shark. But some people, no matter what, are going to believe that if they step foot in a beach, they're going to get bit by a shark, right?
Well, a
So-
lot of people believe systemic racism. Is that something that you believe, that
Absolutely.
racism is ingrained in our every facet or a lot of facets of life? And
Absolutely.
what does that mean? Like, what does that mean
100%.
exactly?
That's one thing that I can say I was definitely more naive on, because at the time I was listening to a lot of African American commentators that were saying this stuff wasn't true. And so when
They're
I,
still doing it.
yeah, and so when I look back on that time period, I think, well, you know, in my mind, I'm following these African American commentators that are saying all this stuff that Jesse Jackson and all these people are saying is all,
Amazing.
yeah, is all, you know, ridiculous. But yes, systemic racism is absolutely ingrained in our culture. Now, what does that mean? That's a huge, gigantic, you know, days-long discussion.
But you think there's
I don't know.
like to me that means white people always done better because of racism.
You know, a good example is like home buying, lending practices, right?
Are you going to cite that thing where a woman was trying to sell her house and she like met the people that wanted to buy it and she got a lower rate than when she would have a white person present that? Is that something that you're going to cite? Because there's no other evidence of that happening ever again. And by the way, homeowners can't meet the buyers. That just doesn't work. That doesn't happen when you sell a house.
I think where I've changed in the last 4 years and over the course of following politics for 15 years is that, you know, I come from a little bit of a journalistic background from school and stuff.
Yeah.
And what I realize now is that for every issue that comes on the table, both sides on the extreme sides are going to be lying. There's going to be somewhere in the middle that is going to make sense, right? So is there a problem with racist cops? Of course, 100%. But how big is the problem? That's where we're going to have to find that that common ground, right? We're going to have to try to figure out.
Why do you think there's
where we
racist
figure-
cops out there?
How could there not be? There's racist people. There has to be racist cops.
So, but what evidence is there that like we need to like there's a giant like they're a giant problem, like giant problem in general, like racist people are a problem, but like to say that there's a problem in the police world because there's racist cops, but what is racist that the cops have done?
Well, if you go through academics, you know, they're going to tell you the problem is over-policing in poor neighborhoods.
So why do they do that though?
Because that's where the majority of the murders in that area occur.
So it's like patterns. It's like a meteorologist who goes, okay, there's patterns happening. There's going to be a rainstorm happening because he sees the patterns. We see crime happening. Well, maybe we should put more cops there. That's racism, or is that just cops trying to prevent more crime from happening?
It's up for debate. So, you know, what academic people will tell you is that the problem is not that minorities commit more crimes. The problem is that there's over-policing in minority areas.
It's
But-
like tomato. It's like a
Well,
chicken and egg.
And then what you're saying is that, well, where are all the like if you get a map of Austin and you say where do all the murders usually occur, and then there's going to be an increased police presence in that area,
Right.
and it's going to affect the people that live in that area. And if the people that live in that area are minorities and there's a perception that they're being over-policed. And by the way, you know, I absolutely agree. There's corrupt cops, there's racist cops, there's a bunch of shady stuff going on, and we should try and be the generation that changes that.
Yeah, but what's the percentage of like bad cops on a force, on any
I couldn't
given
tell
force?
you, man. I have no way of knowing that.
Because the way that we talk about it or hear about it, it sounds like there's more than 1% of cops on like any force, or even cops in general. Less than 1%. I'd like to see numbers, because that's the problem with this whole argument. And I get what you're saying with the patterns versus why are they doing that? Like because they're committing more crime because they're being policed. It's like a chicken and egg thing, and that can be we'll never figure out what is the cause of the crime. But on the other hand, man, we're seeing these patterns happen. Now, if let's say they go to a trailer park where there's like nothing but white people and there's more crime there, like you're going to find the same type of stats there. You're going to find that there's more crime being there, and we're going to have more cops therefore going there. But I don't think it has anything to do with racism whatsoever.
Well, see, that's where you got to try to find the common ground.
Okay.
Like, is there racist cops? There has to be. Of course, there's racist cops.
Yeah, but if we're going to speak that way in like generalities, like, Okay, yeah. I guess there's one of everybody in the
There's
world.
also authoritarian cops
Yeah.
that don't care what race it is, they're going to abuse people, right?
Sure. I believe that more than there's like actual like
Right.
racist
I would
ones
say
going,
I would
"Hey,
say
Edward,
it's
get over there."
probably more, in my mind, it makes more sense that there's just bad cops and that they're also racist because they're horrible people.
Well,
right? Or something.
see, I can go with bad cops as in like they can't handle situations well or they're scared or something. I get that as in bad, but not like that they're evil in any way or they're trying to be bad or try to put somebody else down. It's just hard to believe someone would want to do that, but I think I get what you're saying, and that's it's because that's the way you feel about politicians.
Like trying to say
who
there's,
wants to be a cop? Why does someone want to be a cop? Do you think they want to help people? And that's the same question you'd ask someone that wants to be a politician. Do you think they want to get into be helping people?
I don't know. I think there has to be a combination. That's why I say, like, for everything, you really have to try to find the middle ground. Because, like, is there going to be bad cops? Of course there is. Is there going to be good cops? Yes, of course. Is there going to be cops in the middle that are just doing it for money? Sure. Like, is there a problem with the police force in America today?
Does one
course.
rotten apple spoil the whole bunch?
No, but as we look at over the course of our lifetime, what's happened, we have the over militarization of police forces is a big issue that was going on in our lifetime.
Yeah, they have everything. As long as we're able as Americans to obtain the same type of weapons they have, I think it's fair game. But if they have weapons that we can't have legally, I think that's ridiculous. And why? It's tyrannical if you think about it. If the government can have a weapon that you can't have, how is that anything other than tyranny?
Yeah.
Especially if they may or may not use it on you one day. That's the problem. All right, we're just getting started here. We're 20 minutes in. I want to get into some. Talking about paying the fair share because the first link I have here, it's Biden just saying I'm a capitalist, but everyone pay their fair share, and paying their fair share has been sort of a theme here lately, because as you know, not everybody pays their fair share, and it's not the rich, it's the poor who's not paying their fair share. Matter of fact, 61% of Americans last year alone didn't pay income tax. Yeah, I know there was the coronavirus, but there's a lot. 61, that's half of Americans didn't pay income tax, and there's this push to have the rich pay fair share. It just those words, and when you were talking to me about like control, like this is a pure example of Democrat control, where they will say these key words that fuel you, like, oh, those rich people have everything we want, and make you feel jealous and have green with envy and go, well, I don't know how that helps you get any more wealth, but they make you fight against the people that have done nothing but help us in our lives. I mean, the clothes we wear, the technology we have didn't come from like the rich people. It made them rich. And therefore, we think that they have this crazy technology. Some people would talk about Bill Gates or Elon Musk as some sort of elitist Illuminati, if you will.
Right. If you'd like to find out the truth about Bill Gates, you can just check out the Corbett report.
Yeah. And I don't know what to think about that, about Bill Gates, because there's a lot of, I don't know if we want to call it mis or disinformation, but I'd like to have some, I don't know, something that could talk to me on my level about Bill Gates being this absolute crazy.
James Corbett.
Okay.
He'll tell you.
Well, I guess I may have to
report.
check it out. But can you pop up this link here and we'll talk about paying our fair share. And I want to ask you, what does that mean? What does fair share actually mean? Right. At least to you. And I don't care what you think other people think it means, because it's about you today. Like, don't you think that everyone should everyone pay the same amount? Should they pay the same percentage? Should we keep on with a progressive tax? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, when I hear you talk about it, I hear that you're falling into the same trap that so many people have fallen into, right? You listen to a Steven Crowder, and he gets out the table, and he's like, well, what is your fair share? 10%, 20%, 30%? Look at how much these rich people are paying.
Yeah.
You know, the reality for me on taxes is I told you earlier, it does make me uncomfortable that there's people that have $1 billion, because I know how little money it takes to be comfortable and get you over absolute poverty. And there's so many people that I've known in my lifetime that are still living in paycheck to paycheck. So, when you say, are they paying their fair share? Well, the real reality is that the government is not spending our money correctly. The government has enough money to fix a lot of these issues that we face, but they're mismanaging the way that the money is spent, right? So we could tax every rich person 100%, give it all to the government, and they're still going to mismanage that money, and none of these problems are going to get fixed, right? But at the same time, it makes me uncomfortable that there's people that are super wealthy. I don't think that we should live in a society where one person has over $1 billion. I don't like that. I don't know what the answer is there, but it doesn't make me happy. And then the other thing is, when you think about poor people in general, you have so many people on the right now that were arguing against unemployment payments and arguing against food stamp benefits for poor people during the coronavirus, right? And it's stuff like that where, as much as I want to agree with lower taxes and lower, tax rates for everybody, the same people that want the lower taxes and the lower tax rates and stuff are also criticizing people in need to a heavy extent. So, I think you and I can agree, we've known so many people that we worked with that didn't have health insurance, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, is the answer that we go towards a European-style healthcare system? I mean, obviously, I don't want something very similar to that, because when you even think about who created the vaccines, right? America, right? So we need that innovation in the medical industry in order to solve real problems. You can't have innovation when everything is stuck down and they can't try and innovate, right? But at the same time, I don't want to live in an America where a poor person is sick and doesn't go to the doctor. And that makes me so sad that, it's something that needs to change. How do we get there? I have no idea, right? But
Well, it sounds like, you've changed a lot in the last 5 years.
you have to find like a middle ground. Like, do we want socialized medicine? No. But do we want poor people to be sick and not go to the doctor? Also, no. You know what I mean?
Well, then
There has to be something.
two answers that there's two answers, and it comes from both sides. Socialized medicine. The other one is deregulate and have more doctors. The more doctors, the more competition, the cheaper things tend to be. And capitalism solves any. Maybe there'll be this push. Let's say it all goes the Republicans' way, and there's cheaper and cheaper medicines, cheaper this, because there's tons of it out there. But then there's more people that are dying through malpractice or something because someone's trying to make the cheapest, trying to get the customers and trying to do that. But capitalism solves that issue by presenting it while people complain about it, and people stop patronizing and go to the next one, which is better. It solves itself. It doesn't need any government intervention, which is what the government wants to do. It wants to involve itself in every facet of everything, and so they shut down, and they want us, and I think you agree that they want us to be dependent on the government.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to. That's where we go into conspiracy.
Oh, of course. There's no way we can prove any of it, but it seems odd that, what you were talking about, how you thought it was released accidentally, the coronavirus. I remember talking about it when it first came out. It's like March of last year, and I was like, well, there was all this Free Hong Kong protest thing happening, right? Free Hong Kong, and they were all fucking fighting for their freedom to be independent, and all of a sudden the coronavirus is out. And then all that stopped. And I remember thinking that, oh man, could that be because of that? Maybe they released it. But I was always thinking, maybe did China release this intentionally? In the grapevine, I saw that there's a Chinese communist defector who's saying that China released it on purpose. I can't. It's unsubstantiated in my perspective. I haven't seen any other thing. I just saw a simple headline from Tim Pool, of all people. So I don't know how often he's wrong, or he just reports what's out there. So he's not right or wrong about things. He just reports, and then gives his opinion on
Right.
shit there.
Was it intentionally released? That's like the same question of who killed JFK. Like, we're never going to know. There's no way we'll ever know, right?
Could we know though? I mean, first of all, conservatives were always talking about that this was leaked or something from the Wuhan lab, and we were always told, no, that's conspiracy theory. First of all, this came from bats, from somebody eating a bat from the wet market in Wuhan, and that turned out to not be true at all. And
Most people believe it was accidentally released.
yeah, at least it released from the lab. That's what we can all agree on. But even when we talked about this concerted effort, and maybe I don't think we talked about it on the air, but James O'Keefe, how he's seeing how social media is censoring speech, and in a way where if we talk about the Hunter Biden thing, I don't know if you even kept up with the Hunter Biden laptop, but the New York Post got images from his laptop that was brought to a repair shop or whatever he never picked up, and that got them kicked off of Twitter or at least suspended or whatever, and then turned out to be all true. But it was like this effort to censor this stuff that was obviously not favorable to the people who bow down to the big tech companies, like who's in office at the moment.
What do you mean?
Well, they're bowing to them. They're working in concert with them. I'm talking about Democrats working in concert with like Facebook to censor what is out there when it comes to dissenting opinions. Everything that what I was mentioning there is that the Republicans were mentioning that this was a lab leak from day one. But if you were to post that on Facebook or something, this would get a fact check, or you'd get suspended for misinformation. Those turn out to be true. Where's the retribution in that? Because there's a concerted effort to keep this, to keep this censoring for whoever it is. I think this lines up with what you're talking about people and control. Whoever it may be, I don't know. And I asked that question to you. I go, who is they? That anyone would say they are doing this, they are doing that. Illuminati. We don't know exactly, but it does seem
it's
that there's
different
something.
based on what issue you're talking about. So if you're talking about they in terms of the city council is doing something corrupt, right? Or they in terms of the state government.
But when you talk about like big conspiracies like Gulf of Tonkin or 9/11, when you say they, who are we talking about? Is there a cabal? Is there like one overlord trying to rule the world or something with a fucking twisty mustache? Who is that? I mean, I know you don't know, but is that what we're getting at?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have public information that powerful government officials from around the world meet. One of them is Bilderberg Group. The other one is Davos. And then the other one is,
Bohemian.
well, Bohemian Grove is more conspiratorial.
Yeah.
That's more like an unofficial thing,
It's
right?
like a party.
But Bohemian Grove is official, even though it's secretive. Davos, Switzerland, happens every year, I think, with the world leaders. And then the G8 summit, right?
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
And then you have the European Union. So there is public knowledge that there are powerful leaders from countries that collaborate to try and influence the policy of their geographic region, right? And we live in a more global society now than we ever have before. So obviously these G8 summits and all these types of things, right? We know that they're trying to work together to influence world policy. Now, they would argue that they're working together to influence world policy in a positive way. But you would have to do your own research, conspiratorial analysis to try to determine what you really believed they are trying to do, right? But is there influential people in each state that have or in each country that have a gigantic ability to sway public policy? Of course we do have that in America. That's why they had arguments about what companies could donate to what campaigns, right? We know in America how it works is you donate large sums of money to people's political campaigns and they treat you favorably with laws, right? Same thing that we had during the 2016 election where people had alleged that Hillary Clinton had the Clinton Foundation that world powers or corrupt people around the world had donated money to in order to get favors from whatever type of political thing they needed from her, right?
What happened to all that money for Haiti?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know much about that, to be honest. So
Neither
don't
do
know.
I.
But
I just know it's gone missing, and there's this kind of like that's one of the conspiracy deals that
yeah,
they raise all this money for Haiti and never
like
made it.
the easiest conspiracies to look at are missing money, right? How does money go missing?
It's a good fucking question.
Right.
How does it go missing? And you were talking about like the day before.
Right.
September
So we
11th.
know leading up to 9/11, the Pentagon came out days before 9/11 and said we have $2 trillion that we cannot account for. We don't know where it is, what happened to it, how it was used. I would argue a lot of that probably was used to build doomsday facilities and that type of thing, because we know that under the Denver airport, they built a city underneath the Denver airport that was covered up in concrete. Right.
Is that actually true?
Yeah. So, there's all kinds of places we know about that are like in the sides of mountains, right, and stuff that they have that are public knowledge.
Do we know that, or is that just like grapevine that we've heard that kind of shit before?
Yeah, there's public knowledge of those things. So, a lot of that missing money, I would argue, goes to some sort of doomsday preparation in terms of secret government facilities that they will go to in the event of a doomsday, right? Secret cities that they can live in when everything goes to the apocalypse or whatever. The other thing is
Who maintains them? Like they exist right now, right?
so you could do research on what facilities exist for the government officials that we currently have.
They call them DUMBs, Deep Underground Military Base, right?
I don't know if that's what they call it, but is that from a movie?
I don't know. We used to say we're broadcasting from our deep underground military base here, and that used to be what we said. It's dumb.
Right.
Is what the acronym was.
So where does this trillions of dollars of missing money go?
Well, hold
We
on.
don't
First
know.
of all, I wanted to go back to so if these hives exist or whatever, like is there like somebody maintaining them? Is there like housekeepers? Because you can't just like leave a house there. Well, it'll. I don't know. When you don't live in a place, it goes to shit, right? For some reason, if you don't use a house, it like gets ruined quicker.
Right. So, that's all speculation, right? What I'm saying is speculation, right? So
Right.
when I think, how does $2 trillion go missing? Well, we do have some evidence that there was structures built underneath the Denver airport that got covered up with concrete. Now, the official explanation is that it was structurally insufficient, so they covered it up, right? But, you can look at what facilities that the government currently has that we do know about, so those are things. But, yeah, dude, so when you say, is there a conspiracy, a new world order to try and control everybody? Well, we do have a lot of actual real information that powerful people around the world do get together to try to influence world events. And that could be something as noble as ending poverty, or it could be something sinister like releasing a virus. We don't know.
Think maybe, because that's how I think, like the left and the right. Like I don't know if I think any of them are actually evil. I think that they both think that they're doing good. Like the bleeding heart liberals are doing things because they think that they care, and there's lots of unintended consequences to their caring and the policies they want based on the care for others, because it infringes on other people's rights. I don't have to care for anybody. That's my policy, right? I don't have to care for anybody, and you can't guilt me into doing so. I will do it because I want to do it, and I have empathy. I'm not some soulless fucking libertarian. I don't want to pay for others because I have a hard time paying for myself already. So, things like socialized medicine, I'm like, fuck that, because of course I'm going to have to pay into something that I don't need or I may not want, and that's tyranny. Paying taxes is tyranny in a lot of ways.
Man, please don't use the word tyranny. Just,
Why not?
take that out of your vocabulary.
Why not?
Because the majority of people that say this word and what it's associated with is not historical tyranny. What most
What
people
is?
are talking about is political infighting when they say the word tyranny.
No, it's people that are the leaders. And so that's assuming that we believe that the leaders that we elect are actually doing things like making laws that cops enforce, because that's still happening from that level. It is happening.
I guess when I hear a right-wing commentator use the word tyranny, I roll my eyes severely because it's so misused of a word when they're just talking about a basic law. It's so ridiculous. Anyways.
Why did the forefathers leave England? Because they said they got away from tyranny. And I think theirs was just an overbearing.
I mean, yes, 400 years ago, that's what they were talking about.
Yeah.
You know, what does that have to do with today? I don't know.
I mean,
You know what I'm
history
saying?
repeats itself.
In some ways, yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
and I think right now we're hearing it a lot with mandates and such, with vaccine mandates. How do you feel about all the vaccine mandates? Are you for having to prove that you've been vaccinated to be able to do certain things? Is this akin to voter ID? Like, any thoughts on vaccine mandates?
I think, you know, if the government's going to tell you that you're required to take a medicine in order to be a part of human life, it's definitely something that you should look at with a very skeptical view. You know, you should say, why is this happening, right? Like, what do they want us to take this vaccine for? Now, I'm vaccinated, right? So I looked at the situation. I said, I've had vaccines for everything else in my lifetime, and I'm going to get vaccinated for this virus as well, right?
Correct.
But I think as much as people are concerned about government regulating their bodies in one way, they should also be concerned about government regulating your body towards what medicines you're forced to have. And, you know, they could all be wrong, and we should be taking the vaccine to get rid of the virus, but you should still have some level of skepticism to say the government now has the power to give us a shot that we don't want, right? So there should be some kind of reasonable skepticism of that.
And considering what we're seeing in Australia, I mean, all this is right at our doorstep. Hopefully it's not going to happen because, you know, we didn't mandate guns to be illegal a long time ago like Australia did, right? So I think we're going to be okay because there's people, like 80 million of them, that will fight for that kind of freedom away from vaccine mandates, having to prove that you've been vaccinated for something. I think it's really odd because I truly believe in the vaccine and in vaccines in general. I don't believe that. I believe that because it works so well, I don't have to worry about getting sick, and I think it shows in the cases, right? The cases have been going up, sure. We're still getting it, but are we dying from it? No. No vaccinated people are dying from it, hardly ever. Breakthrough cases are very rare. So therefore, why does a mandate need to happen? And therefore, we talk about control. I mean, why do they need to control it so bad? They gave us the masks. Remember, good old Joe Toboggan was all, we don't have to wear masks. If you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear masks anymore. And we thought we weren't going to get, we thought that when we gave them power, they don't give it back, but they did. But then they took it right back from us because we didn't treat that right. We got more cases up and masks and this and that. I mean, the mask mandate is tyrannical.
Right. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say in this conversation is that the word tyranny is now associated with a lot of people that their behavior is abhorrent, right? There's a lot of people with a F-word Biden sticker on their car that use the word tyranny heavily when they're talking about political issues. I don't want to be associated with that. I don't want to be associated with those people. I don't want to be associated with that mindset. I don't want to be associated with people that have a come and take it flag on their car because I feel like it's just unreasonable.
Well, they have a come and take it, and then they have a Blue Lives Matter sticker right next to it.
And all that. So, you know, I don't want to be associated with people that are that close-minded, right? Like, I think that you should have a healthy skepticism of everything that the government wants to do because of what we know that's happened in our lifetime. And so, you know.
So you're saying it's okay to be skeptical about the vaccine?
It's okay to be skeptical, but at the same time, it's not okay to be unreasonable about your safety and other people's safety either. You know, like, there is a coronavirus. It has killed a bunch of people. It is scary. We should be concerned about it. You should get a vaccine to protect yourself. If everybody got a vaccine, maybe this wouldn't be as big a problem as it is right now.
Do you think the Delta
But
variant...
you should also be skeptical about what medicines the government can force you to inject in your body.
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of misinformation from... we had this gal on that was walked around downtown and filmed her with like a magnet and like asked people if they got the vaccine and then if it stuck to their arm, you know, and it was like... it's going to stick because it's Texas for all, and it's one of those flat magnets you buy at like a gift shop or
'Cause it's
something.
hot outside, you mean?
Yeah, it's a bit humid, but you know what they did is they tried to say we wiped it down a little bit. The skin in itself is like sticky substance when it's just a little bit moist, and you know it's shit like that that made people that make people on the right who are at least skeptical about the virus. It makes them look bad because they're all lumped together. When you have this gal that's talking about, they put this metal in this in the microchips, Bill Gates microchips. I mean, I don't know if you're into any of that or hearing about that, but
I mean, you think about, like, if someone says microchips, right? Immediately they're labeled a psychopath, right? But we have microchips in our
I'm gonna
pets.
say you have a microchip on you right now.
Like, there's a first of all, the microchip is this. This
That's
is
what I'm
the
saying.
microchip.
We all have a microchip on us. Like
Yeah.
when people talk about, I don't want this or that. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? But at least you can remove it. I think that's the kind of thing you can chuck it if you want. You know? Oh shit! I got my watch that is connected to the thing. You know? So I'm fully connected to the simulation in a way.
You know, we know that
people are
we know
scared
that
of that.
facial recognition technology is becoming widely used.
Which has sort of been a hard thing for people that are in that industry of selling face recognition during the pandemic, man. I think they all went belly up.
You know, you think about the timeline of government and their powers increasing.
Yeah.
That's what we should be concerned about, not any one issue at a time. You know,
Government has too much power.
Is coronavirus real or not? I think
That's a ridiculous
there's enough people,
argument
yeah,
that people would even
Of course
fight.
it's real.
Of course, yeah. People have been dying from
Of course you should get a vaccine because you're not an idiot. And you should,
or, there are healthy people that don't need it or have natural immunity.
I don't know. I mean, I think a virus is going to affect everybody differently because everyone's genetics are different. You know, some people are more predisposed to any type of illnesses because of their genetics, right? And being a virus introduced to your body is one more of those things.
Did you hear about Nicki Minaj's brother's friend took the vaccine and then his balls got swollen?
I think I heard a little bit about that.
It
there's
was
going to
so funny.
be...
Anthony Fauci comes
Yeah.
on. He's like, "This is completely unsubstantiated. This is completely wrong. There's no evidence. He's lying."
Like, here's another example of pure partisan ignorance. People that are against Anthony Fauci. Right?
Are you fucking kidding me? The guy has been nothing but lying to the public since he got in office.
And what?
Or
and
not in
what's-
office since since he's in the limelight for coronavirus. I mean, the whole mask thing alone. When he said masks, okay, they just make everyone feel safe. But then he was asked if he regret that because he went back on. He goes, "Why would I regret that?" And then he told us the reason why he said that because there was a paucity in masks. He had to lie to us. He's a bureaucrat. He's not a doctor. He's a bureaucrat. He happens to be a doctor, but he's a bureaucrat. And he's lying. He constantly lies. And like the vaccine mandate, he goes, "No, that's not what we need to do. We're not going to consider that." And then it happens. And it's not worse than it was a year ago when they were talking about it. The guy has been nothing but wrong on everything.
Okay. Wrong is one thing.
Yeah.
Okay. But the...
For the man who gets paid the most, the highest paid federal employee in America.
The people that are,
Anthony Fauci.
saying that they're against Fauci are almost 99% misinformed people that don't know what they're
I
talking
don't
about.
know. They'll cite the same thing that I did about the mask and him
Right.
admitting that he lied.
He was okay under one president, but under a different president, he's a big
He wasn't
problem,
even. We criticized him on that,
it's ridiculous.
and he was still under Trump. Like we criticized him from the beginning, and Trump was like, "No, he's good. He's a good guy. Don't."
What do you think that he's doing all these things for? If he's lying, or
He's a bureaucrat.
is he just wrong, or is he lying?
Well, he's a bureaucrat, so he lies. He has to lie because of whoever is controlling what's going on. I mean, he has to lie. Like maybe because he said there was a paucity in masks. Why would he tell everyone, "No, we won't
And
need
I'll
that.
tell-
It
I'll
makes
tell
people
you this,
feel
man.
better."
Throughout the course of the pandemic, this is circumstantial evidence, but everybody I know that wore a mask and distanced did not get it. Everyone I know that did get it was not wearing a mask and not distancing. So there has to be some way that the mask helps.
Yeah, sure. It's a literal barrier. But now that the Delta virus is coming out, and if I'm not mistaken, the Delta virus is more contagious than the original coronavirus, smaller than the coronavirus, and can pass through cloth. Therefore, masks aren't as effective as they were against the Alpha
I
variant.
mean, does it dramatically, if you're in a room and there's 10 people and they're all wearing masks, does it dramatically bring down the percentage of chance that you might catch it?
Probably, but
So there you go.
yeah, and that's enough for people. They go, if it saves one life, that's a tactic that they'll use. If it saves one life, if it saves one life. But these are people that are. I almost got into abortion. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
You're getting an abortion?
No, we're not. I'm getting one. We're out of here in about 8 minutes.
Dang.
We're gonna keep going on for another hour, but I think we should talk about some of these, at least a couple of these stories that I pulled up. I'd like to talk about, like, I know you don't even fall into the trap anymore, as you'd say, right? But, like, what is going on with people and ropes in general, like cords? How they're misconstrued for, like, nooses, or they're some sort of tool of slavery. It brings back memories of slavery days. And I'm talking about, the NASCAR noose that was hanging up, whatever turned out not to be a noose. Talking about in this example, I'll get into more of this example, but in specific, what I'm talking about is the horseback riders, the border agents, accused of cracking whips. We'll get into that on the other side. Like when we were talking out there, it's like, man, we shouldn't be talking right now. We should keep it because there's a lot of good stuff we want to talk about. But I mean, what got you away? Because I mean, it's only been a couple of years, and you were real like hardcore Republican, real hardcore Republican. I say.
I would say like reluctantly voted Republican because I believed on paper what some conservatives said.
Yeah.
I would never say that I donated a cent to a Republican. I would never say that I moved a foot for a Republican politician. Never.
Yeah, and I mean, what you say about Trump being like the first independent like president, like, yeah, I get that. And I didn't vote for him the first time around. Actually, I think I voted for. If I didn't vote at all, it would have been. I think I voted for
Johnson, right?
Yeah, I went Jill Stein. That's right. I voted for Jill Stein because it was a woman still, and I was like, I'm going to vote for a woman, but I didn't know what her platform was. I would have voted for Gary Johnson because he's a libertarian. And any time around now I'm going to be voting libertarian, but you don't think libertarians are ever going to be prominent in the political world? And you don't consider yourself any sort of political party these days, do you?
Oh, I never have, man. I never have. I think that in my 20s I voted. I didn't even vote that many times, but I would vote in local elections and stuff towards the conservative side because of what conservative commentators were filling my head with. They were saying that, we need less government regulation, we need less taxes, we need less wars all around the world and all this kind of stuff. I think what I found out over watching this stuff for over a decade is that all these people are willing to change their opinion based on who's in office. And it makes me believe that they're not genuine. And it makes me believe that, a lot of this political infighting is all a smokescreen in order to get bigger agendas passed, right?
Yeah, I don't know, man. When you say that, I don't know if I agree because I feel that there's one side that is more consistent and there's another side that's less consistent, obviously, in my eyes. And I'm coming from a place where I didn't think politically at all a few years ago. So, and I've always been able to tell, or at least think I can tell, a trick when I see one. And yeah, there's some Republicans, but I feel like overall the Republican Party is a better party to be part of. I mean, both of them, I think they should go away completely, but I think they both lie about taxes. One says they won't raise taxes and will raise taxes. The other one says we won't raise taxes, and then they spend a lot more for some whatever.
Right. We're not going to raise property taxes. We're just going to reevaluate the cost of your house.
No new taxes. I read my lips, right?
Your property's worth more now, but we didn't increase your tax rate.
That's how is that not tyranny? I mean,
right.
How can they fucking charge you for property you own already? Like, that's like, what the fuck is going on? Like, that's something that every person can agree on.
Home ownership doesn't really exist.
You don't.
You only
because
rent
what happens
the
if you don't
property.
pay your property taxes?
You don't have a home anymore.
So you don't own the home.
You
the
never own
fucking the America owns your home.
Right.
That's tyranny.
It's upsetting.
Is it tyranny? I'm gonna keep saying tyranny because he said I should never use tyranny again. But tyranny is
I
a
mean,
tyranny
do you want
word.
to be associated with the type of people?
But
saying
like when
that?
you say like I'm
know.
not gonna be associated, but like that's like people that say like, oh, I'm not using this anymore because white supremacists use it now. It's like, what the fuck?
Okay,
Like this was a joke
like
the
people
whole time.
saying like Joe Biden is perpetuating tyranny. What? You know, like, so those are the kind of people that I roll my eyes at. You know,
Yeah, I go, come
like
on.
just
I mean,
because I disagree with them,
Yeah.
they're not a tyranny.
yeah, I feel you
Yeah.
like that when people are, but the same thing happened on the other side with Trump in the office. It's like I think this is all par for the course, man. Like people are there's going to be groups of people who, like our last former co-host of this show, fucking anything he did, they would do the opposite. It's like they had a derangement syndrome,
Absolutely.
and people have BDS. That's Biden
Biden
derangement syndrome.
Yeah, I mean the misinformation coming out from people that I used to think were honest on Biden is so disheartening that it's just made me kind of throw my hands up and say this all has to be a charade. You know what I mean? Like, how can these people be so smart and try and tell you what you're supposed to think, and then they completely change their mind based on who's in office? You know, it's disingenuous.
When people say that he's senile, and that's what you're referring to, I think that he's actually senile? No, I think that he's flubbing up a lot more on speech, but I can relate. Fuck, I do it all the time when I'm reading stuff, man.
I
But-
think he's too old to be president.
I can absolutely 100%
But
agree.
I don't think he's senile yet. And
Well, I think he's
you know.
declining in his mental health.
How can you not decline it?
I'll tell you what.
80,
Remember
I
that
guess,
interview
but-
with someone's like, "Will you take a mental test?" And he's like, "No. Why would I do that? That's like me asking." There's a black host. That's like me asking you to take a cocaine test. Like he's obviously
I'll take a
slipping
cocaine.
and in his he's declining in his mental health. But it's fun for me because I miss politics when Trump was in office because he made it fun in a way, which I think should be the point of politics. It's like we're just living this one life. Why are we fighting against each other, man? Let's have it fun and
it's by design.
it's got to be by
If we're
by
fighting
design.
each other, we can't fight the authority.
Oh,
That's the whole
My
purpose
man.
of all this stuff.
all right. I've still got a minute, and I got one more minute left here. So we're gonna continue on the other side. If you're watching us live, mind you, we recorded this a week and a day ago. So we're gonna figure this out and get you guys a live episode. But it's weird because this episode airs next Friday,
Oh, really?
not even tomorrow. So it's like that Mr. Show bit. Well, we can talk about that off the air. But we're gonna talk about the border agents. You know, it's like when I don't even know if I want to talk about any of that stuff because like when I talk to you, it's like it's not going to be. It's not palatable because like I know how you feel about those things and it's not a harp on you. It's like, yeah, I get you. Like, who gives a fuck about these fucking whips? Who gives a shit about the 1984 news story that talks about seatbelt laws and how it's like the same type of talk that people are talking now about the vaccine mandates. All right, we'll see you guys next week. I'm Los. That's Andy. That's Brandon. We'll see you guys next week. Keep going on for the other side. All right, we're on the other side. If you're watching us, we are actually live on Facebook and YouTube. And Dee Blanton, the famous journalist here in Austin, Texas,
Freelance.
a freelance journalist for any big publications you had, like any like big publishers.
No.
No.
I have published on the internet at different magazines, and I wrote a newsletter once upon a time for a politician, very briefly.
Very briefly.
But that's all I've done with that.
What are you doing these days? Are you? I know you're not stock day trading, but you want to get there.
I'm trying to learn how to be a stock trader.
Yeah. Are you still like
I'm part-time
favoring?
musician.
Oh, that's right. You do jam all the time, and yeah, there's never more jamming that I've seen you do than recently. Like you're playing like friends all
Right.
the time.
Mhm.
Get your blues duo
Yeah, I have a Sunday morning show,
Sunday morning.
and
A lot of people come out on Sunday morning.
Yeah, but I've just been enjoying life, man. I mean, I make money with gig work when I need extra money,
It's
but
great.
I also play music and also just leisurely live my life.
Are you doing any like
like to play
DoorDash
golf,
or anything
you
like
know.
that?
Uber Eats.
Uber Eats.
Mm-hmm.
We had this story that we talked about where this guy left a like poor note to somebody, like a DoorDash driver left a note saying like if you can't afford a tip you shouldn't use our service or whatever. And I thought it was fake, but like there's I guess apparently like you can the DoorDash drivers know their tip or before they can pick up the food. Do you have that going on? Do you know what people are tipping you before you pick up their stuff?
They give you an estimate.
Oh, an estimate.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like grouped together. Like you have a bunch of them that you pick up, and you all like you have to pick them up and then go to them, or is it like one you pick up, move, one you pick up, you move, and
Yeah, it's kind of like one at a time, sometimes two at a time. The money's consistent. I'd
good.
say you make really good money doing it. It's very easy.
Yeah.
It's a secret we don't want everyone to know about.
Would you clear 50 last year or what?
Did I clear $50? Yeah, I did actually.
I cleared $50 at DoorDash. Yeah. You know, you were telling me how much you despise Cruise nowadays. Will you put up this link, Mr. Hard Hat, and I want to watch this, and you can put it like right in the middle of us if you want. But
Video may not play.
oh, really? Why not?
Internet.
Even the internet doesn't like Ted Cruz anymore.
No, but this has something to do with the border crisis and how the hypocrisy he's trying to point out. Where's all the politicians like with their photo ops at the border about this humanitarian crisis we got going on there?
Yeah,
If it is a humanitarian crisis, if anyone wants to call it, but there's clearly people that are
yeah. I think
stuck at the border.
the border crisis is one of the greatest, recent examples of how dishonest the media is. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what happened under the last president was that there was an accusation that detained people that were coming into the country illegally were being held in cages.
Right.
Especially young
The
children
kids in cages.
were being held in cages.
Yeah.
That was absolutely not true. The reality was there was detention facilities that humanely treated people that were in detention centers. So there's a big misconception of what happens when people come to the country illegally, right? In the movies, you'll see a bunch of people walking with their family across the desert, right? But in all reality, smuggling is a huge part in how people enter the country illegally.
The human trafficking, yeah.
Human trafficking, right? And so you could argue that it's very important for us to crack down on illegal immigration so that people are not being human trafficked, right? If
Yeah.
they're being sold into indentured servitude, if they're being sold into
Slavery.
sexual
or
slavery, right?
Yeah,
And you could
absolutely.
say, well, how could someone be an indentured servant in 2021? Well, in someone that doesn't speak the language of the country, it does happen all the time.
Or they have information on their family, like I'll kill your family. Like a
Certainly.
lot of things motivate people to do certain things.
So,
Was
Does-
that a phone call?
Yeah, phone call.
Hey,
so
you're on the
does-
air. Turn them down. Hey, you're on the air.
Well, Andy Blanton.
What's up,
Can
man?
you turn
it
them
down?
Can you
It's too
turn them
loud.
down?
Who is this?
Chris Goodwin.
Chris Goodwin. What's up, man?
What's up, man?
I worked with this guy. He's a firefighter now.
Oh, really?
He's a true patriot. Good American. Yes, sir.
Now I can't hear you guys.
Hold on, we got the volume maxed out down here. Let's get this ready. What's going on, man? Are you still in New Mexico?
I actually just moved back to Texas from New Mexico.
Right
Because
on,
New
man.
Mexico has gotten so insane with the lockdowns.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
The tyrannical lockdowns?
Tyrannical lockdowns. Nobody knows about our governor there in New Mexico, but she was insane. She's one of the most Nazi governors out of them all.
Wow, that's crazy, man.
Have you been watching, Chris?
Have I been watching?
Yeah.
Yeah. I catch you guys every once in a while.
Oh, well, really? Shit. Well, what do you think? It's we've had Andy on. Obviously, you know
I can't
him.
really hear you guys too well, though.
Oh, maybe you need to turn us up in his ear. Yo, check. How about that? Check 1, 2.
That's better.
There you
There
go.
we go.
Yeah, that knob says 2 caller, I think. Yeah. So, any thoughts on what we talked about today? Specifically, I guess, I mean, we didn't get into any of the things I want to talk about, but we talked about, the fair share.
Was this stuff on, or did you say it was running next week?
Fair share.
We're
as
live
far
on
as-
Facebook,
Oh.
but Channel 10 on public access.
Oh, okay. So
We-
we were live, yeah.
Yeah, we've been live.
So I think part of, Chris, what we've been talking about today is a little bit of, political stuff in the news. But really, my concern of everything is more New World Order. My concern is that so many things have led up to some sort of government control over the people that's happening worldwide, right? And
Georgia Guidestones.
the current lockdowns is another step in the control of the government, in my opinion. The world government has now basically told the people that there can be martial law lockdowns at any time, and we should be conditioned for it. You know what I'm saying? What do you think about
yeah,
that, Chris?
unfortunately, can't really hear you well still.
Oh man, can you hear me?
What? Okay. Well, make sure he's turned up there, Brandon.
Am I
I don't
turned
know what's
up?
going on.
Yep. I got my phone all the way cranked up. I got good reception, good Wi-Fi, everything.
Hey.
Can you hear me now?
Check.
There, that's better. That's better.
Well, yeah. Tell me what's on your mind, Chris. Why'd you call in today?
Well, one, because I wanted to know how you guys can sit with your legs crossed like that. But secondly, I just wanted to say hi because I used to work with you at MCC.
I know, man. How's your wife?
She's doing great. She's
Should-
doing great, man.
Should I
We've
sit
been
like
married for
this
12
with my
years.
legs like fully?
Definitely
It's
tell
because
her
I
said
have
hi.
small balls and dick. I mean, is that what you want to hear?
Kind of, yeah. No,
So,
I'm just joshing you guys.
I like the feel of my legs crushing my balls.
Chris, you're working as a firefighter, right?
I was a firefighter. I work at a plasma donation center now.
Oh, okay. What was it like working as a firefighter, man? What was that like?
Well, in New Mexico, it was pretty crazy. It was a small town, so I wore a lot of different hats. So I did wildland fire, I did structure fire, EMS, technical rescue, rescuing cats from trees,
Aww.
resuscitating druggies, all that stuff.
Oh yeah, giving anti-opiates to
Yeah.
people overdosing.
Yeah, Narcan.
Yeah,
Yep.
Narcan. That's right.
One thing we talked about early on in the show was our opinion of racism in the police force.
Yeah.
Do you have any
Well-
insight of that being a firefighter?
I do, because my brother-in-law and my father-in-law are both police officers. And I'll say this. There are definitely racist police officers out there. However, I've had the opportunity to be with people behind closed doors when they had every chance to be completely racist. And this goes for a lot of people that are assumed to be racist, like pretty much every white male. And I've encountered some racism, but it's happened. It's been super shocking because, well, it is shocking when you encounter, a blatant racism.
Right.
But I can remember the events because it's so rare.
What happened?
I'm not denying that racism is out there, but I mean, it's just that I think that's exaggerated. However, I mean, anecdotal evidence. So
Right. I think that's
I think it does exist.
one thing you're saying is one thing that I always wondered myself. It's like if there's so many racist people, how is it that I live in the South my entire life and I've never encountered these people?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know that there are those people that I haven't.
But they're not
encountered,
this
right?
giant threat that we're
No.
led to
absolutely not.
believe, right?
No.
That's what I'm trying
No.
to say. Like the number one threat by FBI's or I don't know if it's FBI, but somebody from the Biden administration, DOJ or some shit, was all like, the biggest threat in America is domestic white nationalism, violence, or
Yeah,
whatever,
That's
right?
a good conversation,
Mhm.
man. I had
Yeah, it's absurd.
I had a friend of mine that he's on the other side of the aisle than I am, sort of. And he told me that he was worried about homegrown terrorism from right-wing activists. And I said, that's not happening. It's not true. And he sent me some articles about it. One of the dudes was schizophrenic. One of the other dudes thought there was lizard people. And one of the other stories was like it was just not enough. So
There's crazies on like every side. I mean,
right,
it's,
there's just crazy people.
but to say that that's America's #1 threat is homegrown terrorism, like is crazy. How people are comparing 9/11 to January 6th, you know, calling it 1/6 and saying that it was a, you know, tragedy that's as bad as 9/11. I mean, that's absolutely sensationalizing. And they call it the deadly fucking riot at the Capitol. The deadly riot. The one person who died.
Had a heart attack, right?
Well, he had a heart attack, but the actual person who died inside was shot by the people inside. It wasn't like they sensationalize it so much to draw up this emotion, this primal urge to like this is democracy. Democracy almost died that day. What? Like they went on like 2 minutes
Yeah.
later.
I think it was a group of really misinformed people that should all be in jail for what they did.
Yep.
But
Absolutely.
other than that, I don't see it as
In
being
jail? Wait, in jail for what?
For trespassing and trespassing and
I
breaking
think
onto federal
I think
property.
if you break through a police barrier, you should be held criminally responsible.
What if the police
Well,
barrier
for
was
how
opened up?
long?
Yeah, for how long?
Oh,
A few months.
I don't know. So yeah, I don't know what the answer
Maybe
is.
a few months, exactly.
I don't know, but it's
they've
federal.
They've had people who are not convicted jailed for more than a year now. So
Sure, and well, it's federal.
Or
You know,
less
when
than a
you
year,
do
but
something on
almost a year.
federal land, let's like if I smoke a joint outside federal land and I step outside and I smoke a joint on federal land, you know, the charge is a lot worse because it's, you know, federal land. It's like you definitely don't want to do it there. So
not very libertarian of you.
Right.
I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm not saying that's what I want. I'm saying that's what the rule is, man. Like
Right.
I don't want that rule, but I'm saying that's what is going on. Federal crimes are going to cost you a lot more than regular civil crimes.
Well, there's much more to the narrative than that because they're saying that this was, you know, they broke their way in, et cetera, but
Yeah.
doors were open for them.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, a lot of doors were open, and those cops actually
Right.
are in trouble. They're in jail now. There's a few Capitol Police that are have been
Interesting.
been busted for it
I think
because
it
they were
was,
taking pictures with them and, you know, and all that shit.
It was a horrible event, and it's something that we should all be ashamed of, I think.
Yeah.
So
I can agree with you 100%. That kind of
yeah.
shit was bullshit. Did Trump incite it?
you know, the people that
No.
complained about non-peaceful protests became the non-peaceful protests.
Yeah, and I said that argument once, and people were like, "This is way different." And I'm like, "Is it really?" People who believe
Well-
something very truly and fought up. I mean, whether or not it's right or not. Like for me, when people were rioting because of George Floyd was murdered, like I didn't believe that. I watched the tape. I don't think that he did that with any sort of ill intention. There was just a lot of pressure going on there, and I think he leaned on him a little too long. But to warrant this thing like he did this on purpose and it led to riots and shit. People believe that he did this because he's racist and led to those riots. People believe that the election was stolen and led to those riots. They both are the same thing, but people don't like to see that they're equivalent on either side. And
Oh, that's a huge problem.
yeah, they both are fucked up. They should have never done that. They shouldn't have been calling it peaceful protest. But it's funny how the media was calling one side peaceful protesting and then obviously calling January 6th the opposite of a peaceful protest.
Well, they called it an insurrection. That's what they called it.
Right. So
Which is-
obviously
which is
that's
totally
media
absurd.
malpractice, right? That's totally
Very media malpractice because
It's total ridiculous.
those rioters, not the January 6th ones, but the other ones, were burning down federal property. They were doing it. It's essentially the same. I mean, there's probably levels of right and wrong when it comes to federal, but like cops versus like the lawmakers, it's still federal nonetheless. They trapped policemen Minnesota in their stations and throwing Molotov cocktails at the fucking place.
Yep.
At least
Yep.
that's what was reported.
Well, they
That's
definitely
fucked up.
did.
That's
Did the same thing in
insurrection.
Portland.
But that's media malfeasance that you were talking about, the malpractice of the media, that they are either they're lying or they're just dumb.
Well,
No, they're absolutely building a narrative that's false.
so you guys have seen the compilations they make where everyone on all these different news shows are using the same terminology.
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know
This
that
is
there's
dangerous for our democracy.
we know that all the major media outlets in our country are controlled by 6 different companies.
Yeah.
So we know that there is a coordinated effort to push a talking point, push a narrative. That does definitely occur, right? And we should all be aware of that. We should all be you know.
So yeah, I hear that a lot, and it's absolutely 100% true, and that's why I go to independent, like conservative media, such
Right.
as Daily Wire or Crowder or something.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of those people either. But
I think they're bringing conservatism to a younger, more hip crowd, and gives them the knowledge to. I don't think any of them are lying. I think they've been very consistent on all their things, and I think it's a little weird that Crowder will go out and try to like bait for debates.
yeah, I think what I don't like about Crowder's and the Ben Shapiro, if you didn't see him on Bill Maher a couple months
gosh.
ago,
I watched that. Yeah.
he made an absolute fool out of himself.
That guy's so annoying. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's horrible.
Well,
Because he's
we
so
I
smart.
don't think we watched it on the show, but we talked about.
He
talked
went,
about he like.
he went on Bill Maher and he tried to go on the attack to try to do another viral, this is me owning some.
No, he was
left-wing
defending. He
people.
was talking to.
But he made himself look like a complete idiot in the process. He's supposed to be smart. He's supposed to
did
be
admit
able to
that,
have
though,
a
from what I
civil
heard.
discussion with people, but he went straight to attacks. So, he's shown himself to be phony.
Well, because the other person attacked him too. I forget who the fucking guy was, but he was this guy talking about critical race theory and how it didn't exist or whatever, and it's not being taught in schools, but it needs to be taught in schools, kind of thing. And Ben Shapiro knows what he's talking about, and he's like, "Do you talk?" The other guy's like, "Do you talk about this kind of stuff on your show? Because if you do, it sucks, right?" And then that's when he made that joke about, "Oh,
Right.
I sleep on a bed of money or whatever."
Here,
Remember what he said?
here's where I don't know about you, Chris, man, but here's where I try to say earlier, where I try to look more at a common ground than I used to. So, I hear on the radio, local radio all the time, all these concerned parents out in Leander and stuff calling in, oh my God, these kids, they're learning about critical race theory and all this
Yeah.
and that. On the other flip of the coin, you and I went to school growing up in the 90s, in the 2000s. I found out recently about the Tulsa riots that happened, right? Back 100 years ago, where Black Wall Street was
I
burned
know where you're
down.
going. I know where
They
you're
never
going with it.
taught
There's a
me
lot of
about
stuff
that.
we were
They
not
didn't
taught
teach
about.
me about that.
Yeah, because do you know what happened? Because they want to try to teach you the wrong history of it. When there's documented history that there's this fucking dude who was on a elevator cart who groped or did something to this white woman who complained, and then they arrested him. Black people came in there, shot some white people, and then the fucking riots happened.
Either way, race relations were horrific at that time. What the white people did to those African American people was horrific. And that's something we never learned about.
Wait a minute, that's ridiculous. Like, see, that's the narrative that you're falling into. You're saying that the white people did this? This did not happen because of white people. This happened because of a guy called Diamond Dick, by the way, groped a woman, an orphan woman, by the way, who had a job as an elevator
the
cart.
town didn't get together in Tulsa 100 years ago and burn down the whole black area of town.
That's not, it's absolutely false. People died because what happened is that the black people came up there and they stood on the steps of the court, and then they shot fired at the white people who were pissed off because one of the darkies fucking molested one of theirs, and they're sort of pissed.
Darkies?
I know, that's what I'm in the mood, in the
Don't
mode
say
there.
that.
Well, that's what they were saying. I'm not saying that's what I would
mean,
say.
So, the middle ground is what Chris was talking about earlier, right? When he's experienced racism from a police officer or whatever, or in real life, it's very shocking because we don't encounter it as often as people make it out to be that it's happening. However, it is happening all the time. I mean,
Well, racism's happening all the time.
So when you talk about critical race theory being taught in schools, maybe that goes too far one direction, but the direction I grew up in, where there was no racism anymore or whatever, is also too far the other direction.
Don't
There
you
has
think?
to be
Don't you think that
where it's
direction
more in the
is
middle,
it's anti-white rhetoric, like it's inherently against your race. Definitely not against my race, but like I fight for your race. I'm sorry if if you're gonna fight against it, but what they teach you is that white people have been the worst to everybody. They are the ones who invented slavery. They are the worst.
Martin Luther King was killed less than 20 years before I was born.
Yeah.
That's one thing that really hit me heavily.
That's so crazy
'Cause I was like, that was not that long
you're
ago.
turning into the, I mean, I'm not
know.
going to call you a racist, but like when you start like saying, okay, a white person killed Martin Luther King, therefore white people, this
I
or
think
that.
that
It's
was a
like, come on.
government conspiracy, personally. That's
Right.
that's my opinion.
JFK,
Right,
come on.
it's right along the lines of that. Of
But
course.
Yeah, FBI definitely killed him.
Yeah, exactly. But, so you have to try to look at everything and figure out where the truth lies, Is critical race theory too far in one direction?
Hot
Maybe.
take, Andy.
What's that? Hot take,
Well,
right?
here's a clear
But
example of
you
why
have to
I
be
think you're
willing
wrong
to
about all
accept
this.
that. You have to be willing to accept that there's a truth to each far end of the spectrum, and you have to figure out what
No,
makes sense.
That's okay, that's true.
No, I
There-
disagree.
See, that's exactly what I'm saying, because when you say there's like everyone has their own truth, that's fucking crazy talk. Like, yeah, everyone has their own opinion or whatever, but there's fact and then there's truth. And the fact is, with the Tulsa race riots or whatever, it's not the way that people want to try to talk about it. The history is just it's there, and people that want to try to teach it will teach you the wrong history of it. And whether or not I'm right or wrong about it, they don't want to teach both sides of that story. They want to teach you one or the other side.
Right.
And that's the problem, because there are two sides to this story, but one of them involves being more racist. The other one's going, a black person assaulted a white woman, which led to this giant fucking riot.
So, what I was saying was that this is something I didn't know about when I was going through school. And so, in one sense, you could say, well, the history of race relations in America obviously is horrible. Obviously, it was before we were born, doesn't have anything to do with us. But to try to whitewash over it and say that, like, oh, none of this stuff is as bad as they say is not good. It's not good to ignore
What does it
history,
benefit?
right?
What does it benefit, though? Like, do we write about the losers in history, or do we write about the winners in history? Like, yes, we know about who lost, but do we need to like sympathize and reimburse them for losing?
Like, I'm just trying to tell you, like, my timeline of what makes me change my mind is that
Sure.
I found out a lot of this stuff is so much worse than I never knew.
Yeah.
Of course it's horrific, right?
Well, it's so
Well, I don't know.
so you
I
think.
learned that it was very bad before civil rights and
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of the
when I
projects
was in
we know. So
school,
I don't know if we had the same experience in high school.
Well, of course we learned it's bad, but, like,
that exactly right.
No.
Like, who like grew up in school and thought like the past was like all great and gravy when we knew that there was slavery that happened.
I don't know. I'm just trying to say, like, when I was coming from the perspective 4 years ago or whatever, where I was listening to
The right perspective.
I was listening from African American prominent people in
Larry
media, like Larry
Elder.
Elder and
Yeah,
others, that were saying
Jesse Lee Peterson.
that this is all nonsense. The truth is, it's not all nonsense, and so there has to be an examination of it, and you see, well, what's really going on right now? Is there racist cops? Of course there is, but how big is the problem? I'm not sure. I don't know how to
I
determine
think
that.
the justice system is more racist than the police on the streets.
It's classist. It's not necessarily racist. So if you have enough money, it doesn't matter what race you are if you have enough money, right?
Yeah,
Certainly.
that's absolutely 100% true, and there's no one I don't think in the world that can disagree with that. I mean, the rich, and that's another thing, that the rich are like our enemies. So it's like now we have to turn into this like, okay, we're all the poor, the middle class don't get shit. Like, think about this. I was thinking about this the other day about middle class. The middle class get nothing. They get bullshit. But like the rich people, they pluck people out of obscurity, like poor people, and like train them. Like, I know John Stossel has this whole thing where he
interesting
donates to this college that helps poor people get a degree or something that they wouldn't have got one in the past or whatever. I'm thinking, man, I grew up middle class and I never got any of that sort of opportunity, and the middle class gets shit.
You never had the opportunity
We
to get
get
a
nothing but
scholarship.
our pride.
No, that to be so poor that somebody would sponsor me because I was so poor. Because
Well, would
there
you-
was scholarships out there for people that tried, but, and I'm saying this sort of jovially, so I'm not trying to
Okay.
be.
I'm not sure what you're going with that. Yeah. I mean, if you want
Because you've lost your sense of humor, I think,
No, I'm sorry.
in
Yeah.
things. The same thing happened to a lot. I think that's what happened to a lot of people. And this is just a general thing. I think a lot of people lost some of their humor in the last 4 years. While I saw this orange guy being a crazy guy, other people saw evil happening and it changed them. Other people saw that happening to them and became spiteful, and now they're doing it to the Democrats. I saw a funny fucking president that like chopped back at people, and I thought that was hilarious, and I miss it. Now we have someone that doesn't do that, and I think it. What's up?
We got David on the line.
Oh, my man.
Hey, Chris, man.
Talk to him?
Hey, Chris, thanks for calling.
Thank
We're
you
going
for
to talk
calling,
to somebody
man.
else,
It's
man.
great to
Thank you
check
for
in with
calling.
you.
Boys, have a good night.
I hope you're doing well out there, man. You were
You
a
too, man. Be safe.
real great guy. So
Be cool.
thanks for calling, man.
David,
What up, my man?
what's going on, dude? When?
Man, I was just listening to the show, dude. I hate to be biased, but especially I have to agree with Los and a lot of what he was saying. One thing I wanted to talk about was how you were talking about race. And just even the idea of people having their truth and how that is so obscure in our culture. The thing that's happened, I've been reading this book called Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton, and that's one thing he argues is because we've gone into this world of your truth is your truth, and we've become people who we just categorize things. So he talks about how, and he's talking about modern man and how modern man is a contradiction. And he says modern man will go into his philosophy study and go into his philosophical meetings, and he will berate people for treating men like beasts. Oh, how dare you treat black people like animals or Mexicans or whatever it is, right? They treat them like beasts. But then he will go into his scientific studies and tell people that men came from beasts. And what's happened so much in our modern culture is that we are no longer consistent, whether it's in our philosophy and our science, because of the idea of your truth is your truth, my truth is my truth. But at the end of the day, truth isn't subjective. There is an objective truth that everybody must submit to. And that's the problem that we have nowadays, is that everybody wants to live in their own little bubble, their own little worldview, and wants everybody else to bow to them and say, oh, you're right.
Yes, you're correct. And there is something, I think someone coined it, and I heard it, but it's like main character syndrome, where, you are the main character.
Yeah.
And it's very narcissistic. We've gotten to that point in society where everyone's narcissistic, man. Like, I have a little bit of it. Like, I mean, look at I'm on camera,
Well, and just to say, who's the gentleman that's in next to you? I had to get the name. I just caught in like halfway into the show.
It's my boy Andy Blanton.
Andy Blanton. Nice to meet you, brother.
The original host of this show.
Yeah. Well, and I just wanted to say, like, I think, because he was talking about how, what he was taught in school, that there, racism was over and there is no racism and all that kind of stuff. But listening to that, like, I don't see that as a bad thing, like being Hispanic, being Mexican, have I encountered racism and all that kind of stuff? Of course I have, but I would rather teach that it doesn't exist and teach people to love one another and accept each other, rather than teaching, look at how bad it is. Because at the end of the day, you always have to ask yourself,
point.
what is the end goal?
That's a good point. What is the end goal of teaching the racism, what happened in the past as racism, or just acknowledging it? I think they want to go, you acknowledge it, but then it's not just acknowledging it, it's about reparations. There's more to it than that, and then just going and learning the history.
I think what happened, David, is we were kind of here today to talk more about overall New World Order conspiracy stuff.
Yeah, we got kind
but
of
I think
dropped in.
what happened was you mentioned critical race theory, and then I think my response to critical race theory was that I was not taught the severity of how bad racism was before I was born. And so I think in some ways it's important for people to understand how bad it was and understand that it's not completely evaporated. But I think also some people can sway too far to the other side and say that it's affecting every second of your life. And I think that there has to be a discussion where there's something in the middle where we can say we got to do everything we can in this generation to make sure the next generation doesn't experience any sort of racism. But at the same time, we need to be honest about what's happening, and honest in a way that we know that it was as bad as it was, and honest in a way that's saying it's not as bad as it people might think on one end of the spectrum. So there has to be something in the middle.
Where I agree, right? Because then there's people who try to be oblivious to it. But at the end of the day, the truth is that the reason America is a racist country, or people say that about America, is because America is the only country that has this many races in it. Nobody talks about, how many Ugandans kill Ugandans, or how many Asians kill Asians, or how many Mexicans in Mexico kill Mexicans, because that's just hatred. That's just murder. That's just killing. But the reason we have racism in America is because America is the dream, the only place where all these cultures and all these backgrounds and all these people can come together and be accepted, but we still have hatred in our heart because we're still sinful. We're sinful human beings. Sin corrupts our heart. So we just coin it as racism, but it really is just hatred, right? You see the same hatred in Mexico and Asia and all these other countries. But the reason we coin it as racism in America is because America is the only place where you have all these cultures coming together.
Correct. Yeah, and I got to cut you off because we're fighting against the clock here. We got to get out of here.
Yeah, of course. I'm gonna go back inside and do my thing, but I just wanted to call you guys.
Thank you,
quick,
David.
You're
Real
doing a
quick,
good job.
David made a really wonderful point.
Thanks for calling, David.
And it's something that David, you made a really important point that I've always tried to keep into perspective, is that there's a lot of bad people out there. And, a lot of times when you look at somebody and you would say, this guy's a racist, in all reality, most of the time, they're just an all-around horrible human being, and they're also a racist.
Yeah.
So I think you got to also keep into perspective that there is good and bad in the world, and there's a lot of horrible people that if they weren't racist, they're still horrible. You can't.
But good and bad is subjective. There's no overall good or bad that anyone can agree on. Like the Thanos, it's the Thanos syndrome where Thanos thought he was going to do well by eliminating half of the world. Like maybe those of the New World Order think they may be doing well by eliminating half of the world or whatever, 50 million thousand or whatever they have.
Who knows?
But we're out of here for the day. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Andy Blanton, for joining me, man. It's been quite a conversation. I knew we probably not even get into any of the stuff. We just
I
would
know.
be talking
We
about
never even
stuff.
got to anything.
It's exactly what we need to do. I don't think the computers were working too well anyways back there, so I think that's a godsend. If you guys like our content, you know where to find us. Otherwise, be cool, stay hip, get yourself a fucking hobby. For Andrew Bland, for me, for Brandon, peace.